Hello everyone. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Novi Lorleso, and I'd like to briefly introduce myself. I hold an undergraduate degree in statistics, a Master of Science in Public Health with a major in biostatistics, and a PhD in international health, where I applied spatial analysis in public health research. Throughout my career, I've gained over 10 years of experience in all stages of research, from data collection to analysis to dissemination. This video marks the beginning of our series on sampling, sample size determination, and data collection. In this series, I will discuss the various sampling methods and explain how they are used to gather reliable data for medical studies. I will also discuss the process of determining the appropriate sample size for your research and explore diverse data collection methodologies. This is the outline of this series, and in this video, I will specifically discuss the importance of sampling, its definition, the different types of sampling, and lastly, I will discuss what is sampling bias. So let's start. First, we will explore the concept of sampling in medical research and discuss different sampling techniques and their applications. Why is sampling important? In most cases, studying the entire target population in medical research is impractical or impossible due to cost, time constraints, or ethical considerations. Sampling allows researchers to gather data in a cost-effective and efficient way that can accurately represent the larger population. Proper sampling techniques ensures the generalizability of research findings and help in drawing accurate conclusions. What is sampling? It is a technique of selecting a manageable group of individuals or a subset from the whole population to make educated guesses. We also call this statistical inferences about the whole population. This is like tasting a spoonful of soup to get an idea of how the whole pot tastes. There are two main types of sampling techniques: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling uses randomization in selecting the sample, while non-probability doesn't use any randomization. Probability sampling ensures that every member of the population gets equal chance to be picked and to be part of the sample for the study. On the other hand, non-probability sampling does not rely on random selection. It is often used in exploratory research or when creating a sampling frame, it is a list of the population, is not feasible. Random sampling is mostly used if you know how big the target population is. If this is not possible, then we usually use non-probability sampling. Why use random sampling? Because random sampling techniques provide the strongest foundation for generalizability, as it reduces sample bias, creates accurate samples, and includes diverse population. There are four common types of random sampling, which include simple random sampling, cluster sampling, systematic sampling, and stratified random sampling. In simple random sampling, each member of the population has an equal opportunity to be selected. Selection is often done by drawing names from a hat or fishbowl method, or using a random number generator. For example, in a hospital with 500 employees, if the HR team decides on conducting surveys, they can pick names out of a bowl. In this case, each of the 500 employees had an equal opportunity of being selected. In cluster sampling, The population is divided into clusters or groups. Then clusters are randomly selected, and all members within those clusters are included in the study. Cluster sampling is beneficial when the population is geographically dispersed. For example, suppose DOH wishes to evaluate the number of households with access to clean water in the Philippines. In that case, they can divide it into clusters based on regions or provinces. This way of conducting a survey will be more effective as the results will be organized into provinces and regions and can provide insightful data. Systematic sampling is selecting members of the population at irregular intervals. It has a predefined range and the least time consuming among the methods. For example, a researcher intends to collect a systematic sample of 500 people in a population of 5,000. He or she numbers each element of the population from 1 to 5,000 and will choose every 10th individual to be part of the sample. So because our total population divided by the sample size would be 10. In stratified sampling, population is divided into subgroups or what we call strata based on relevant characteristics. For example, income, gender, age, and others. A random sample is drawn from each stratum or each category, and stratified random sampling ensures subgroups within the population are proportionally represented in the sample. For example, a researcher looking to analyze the characteristics of people belonging to different annual income divisions will create strata or groups according to the annual family income. For example, less than 50,000 income, 50,000 to 100,000 income, 100,000 to 500,000 income, 500,000 to 1 million, and etc. By doing this, the researcher can conclude the characteristics of people belonging to different income groups. So just a recap, we discussed 4 types of different random sampling techniques, such as simple random sampling, cluster sampling, systematic sampling, and stratified sampling. Now let's move on to the non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling techniques are more conducive and practical method for researchers deploying surveys in the real world. Especially in medical research, non-probability sampling is faster and more cost-effective. Non-probability sampling techniques are valuable for specific research purposes. For non-probability sampling, we have convenient sampling, consecutive sampling, purposive sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. First is convenient sampling. We call it convenient sampling because this method is easy to carry out and easy to get those readily available participants. Convenient sampling is useful for pilot studies or when resources are limited, but it may not be representative of the target population. For example, startups and NGOs usually conduct convenient sampling at a mall to distribute leaflets of upcoming events or promotion of a cause. They do that by standing at the mall entrance and giving out pamphlets randomly. Consecutive sampling is like convenient sampling with a slight variation. Participants are recruited one after another as long as they meet the inclusion criteria and are available. Researchers typically continue enrolling participants until they reach their desired sample size. Using this method, data gathering is quick and easy from available pool. In purposive sampling, researchers purely consider the purpose of the study, along with the understanding of the target audience. In medical research, it is commonly used For instance, a researcher wants to understand the experiences of patients with a rare genetic disorder and how it affects their daily lives. The disorder is rare, so finding participants randomly would be difficult and inefficient. Purposive sampling allows the researchers to deliberately seek out individuals diagnosed with the condition. So this is useful for in-depth studies of a particular group. In quota sampling, the population is divided into subgroups or strata based on relevant characteristics such as age, gender, or income. Sets quotas, or the desired number of participants for each subgroup based on their proportion in the population. In quota sampling, participants are selected non-randomly until the quota for each subgroup is filled. Snowball sampling is asking participants to recommend others who meet the study criteria. This is the sampling method that researchers apply when the subjects are difficult to trace. In medical research, researchers implement the sampling method when the topic is highly sensitive and not openly discussed. For example, surveys to gather information about HIV/AIDS. Not many victims will readily respond to the questions. Still, researchers can contact people they might know or volunteers associated with the cause to get in touch with the victims and collect information. So, to recap, we discussed the different non-probability sampling techniques such as convenience sampling, consecutive sampling, purposive sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. Now I'll discuss what is sampling bias. When the sample selected for a study does not accurately represent the entire population of interest, because some members of the population have a higher chance of being included in the sample than others. To make this simple, imagine you want to know everyone's favorite flavor of ice cream, but you only ask your friends who live on the same street. This wouldn't be a very good picture because your friends might all have similar tastes. Sampling bias is like that in research. It happens when the researchers pick a group of people to study, that is the sample. That doesn't really represent the whole group they're interested in, the population. This can be because some people are easier to ask or more likely to volunteer, but it means that the results may not be true for everyone. For example, if a study on a new medicine only tests it on healthy volunteers, it might not show the side effects that could happen to people who are already sick. What are the common sampling biases? First is self-selection bias. People who volunteer for a survey about a particular health condition might be more passionate about the topic than the general population. Next is undercoverage bias. A phone survey might miss people who don't have landlines or don't answer unknown numbers. Convenience bias, when serving students in a classroom may not capture the views of those who are absent or don't attend the classes regularly. So this ends the first part of our video series. Thank you for watching.